Alex and I were giving a concert at McCabe's Guitar Shop in Santa Monica, and George turned up at that. He introduced himself, and we got talking. And, in those days, there wasn't a lot of money. I wasn't going to some fancy hotel or anything else. But, George, he said, if you want to crash here, that's fine. And it's like, in those days, that's great. Okay, I can save a few bucks and stay on a couch for the night. So I was kind of, here's a blanket and I'm on the couch and the rest of it. And he said, is it okay if I play the piano a little bit for you while I'm going to sleep? And understand that at that point I knew him as a guitarist, and so I'm listening to what became a lot of the material in Colors Dance. And in the morning I said, what was that stuff? And I said, I really think maybe we should do the piano record first. And he was not real pleased with that concept. But I said, I tell you, you know me. I'm the guy who did Windham Hill. I'm the guy who puts this together. And I'm telling you that the guitar is absolutely wonderful, but what you're doing is so unique that I really, really want to go with the piano to begin with. Trust me, let's see where we can go with that. And he said, fine. And that was that was it. I mean, he ultimately got around to a lot of the other things that he was involved in, or loved. But obviously, I mean, he became really world famous. I mean, he was world famous in Japan. He was world famous in Germany. He was, you know, we had wonderful arrangements with Europe and Japan, and so we were touring in Japan together. My guitar and his piano. I do remember people saying, "Why are you wrecking your good folk label?" I never said I was a folk label. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's not the way I saw it at all. What is the heart of the music is what matters to me, and George is that in abundance. Yeah, that was the first. I mean, having played at McCabe's and going to his house and, some guitar and the rest of it. But, then ultimately this, do you mind if I'm playing the piano a little bit while you're going to sleep? It's like, well, maybe piano first. It was just so surprising. It was so left field. He wasn't, George wasn't a promoter, and he just loved music and he loved musicians. So it was just kind of left field, but it moved me so much. And having been a real fan of the Köln concert, to me it was like, oh, I think somewhere in my head was like, ooh, Windham Hill is here. Windham Hill can be this. It can be bigger. It can be broader. It can offer a much wider range of things even than I expected. You meet people and you might say, oh, they kind of remind me of blah. George Winston, you can't say, oh, it reminds me of somebody else. No, George was so unique as a person. His intellect was so unique. He lived in his world of music. He was a very private guy, despite this huge career and all the people that he played for. Well, having gone through, the upheaval of Colors Dance, I still put that one on, and it. Oh, but there's so much there. It's not just intellect here. It's this record label that I'm starting, and this guy is expanding what we're doing, and he was absolutely unique. It's very hard for me to say, what's this here. This one thing was the most amazing. I mean, Windham Hill was, we were doing very, very well. Playing the Seattle Opera and my cousin Alex Degrassi is, on my building crew. Because again, Windham Hill Builders, we were a general contracting company. That's what we did to make money. Um, the whole thing just grew generally. I mean, just, a few friends and people that I really admired and the rest of it. But Windham Hill went from a small independent label to an absolute monster of a success. And it opened up doors for so many other people who would not have had. I mean, George went through the big door and made that possible for Shadowfax. And I mean, you can go on forever. Michael Hedges, you go through the whole. George really was the guy who opened the door really, really wide and created a room for Windham Hill to grow enormously, not only in the United States, but in Europe and in Japan and touring in Japan and the rest of it. And I think being realistic, I think we would have had a really, really good label. And I think we would have made a lot of good music, and I think we would have grown to some degree. But you couldn't count on having the explosion that George Winston experienced, and we thereby experienced as well.